interactive session. And today we have a whole panel with us today, and I'm happy to have you guys today. And we'll start by introducing ourselves briefly, and we'll start from my far left. Introduce yourself, sorry.
Hello everyone, my name is Selina Meme. I'm saved and I love the Lord, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Mwongera. I'm a final student at Kenyatta University, taking economics. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Pastor Kinoti, the youth, teens and children's pastor at Ruaraka MCK. It's good to be with you today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mwongera. I'm a clinical psychologist working at Kenyatta National Hospital and also in private practice. Welcome for this one.
Hi guys, I am Rachel Kinya, a psychology student in Kenyatta University.
Hi guys, I'm Maureen Ettore. I'm a community practitioner.
I'm happy to have you all, and today we are talking matters mental health. And as you know, most of us as young people, we face so many psychological problems on a day-to-day basis, and at times we don't even know how to deal with them. And today we shall be tabling that with our one and only Dr. Mwongera, and also my friends here will be sharing things that they feel we face on a day-to-day basis. And I'll start by handing over to Maureen to tell us or share any questions that you might feel young people are facing right now.
Yeah, at the moment, I'd like to share a question that is common to all of us. Like, a lot of times, people beat themselves down over things that they can't control. How does one help themselves through such situations?
Okay, come up again. There's something that I did not get.
A lot of times, people beat themselves down over things they can't control.
Right.
So how does one help themselves through such situations?
Okay. That's a very good question. First, we need to understand that in life, there are things you cannot change. Even if you try to change, as much as you try, you'll not be able to change. So the thing is to be able to understand there are things that you'll not be able to change. But then you need to understand what are they. And something like weather, something like what is happening, economic situation that is here in Kenya, and the epidemic that we are going through, we cannot change that. The other thing, we cannot change human being. So once you understand that, then you know the next thing is how do I cope? Develop coping mechanisms so that you'll be able to cope with what you can't change. Because most people spend a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to change things. And what happens after that? You get frustrated. And after frustration, then you get into depression or conflict. Then you have people breaking up relationships, having conflict in maybe even places of work. So what I advocate is please learn to accept things that you cannot change in life and learn to cope with it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daktari. And another question I'd like to pose to us today is you find that the concept of happiness is quite relative to us as young people.
Right.
And if you bear in mind things like social media, they make us see that life is perfect, and you start asking yourself, am I enough? Am I happy with what I have? So how would you encourage or advise young people to deal with this problem?
Okay. Yeah, it's good that because especially the young generation, we are stretching ourselves too much, and we are not able to live within our means. And especially with the social media, there's a lot of glamorous life, and there's a way even the media would like to portray. And especially when you look at the celebrities we have, there is a kind of lifestyle they would want to portray. And of course the young people would like to be like them because you have some people you look up to. The thing is to understand, and probably I've mentioned it before, is that learn to learn your own race. People have different resources, people have different abilities. So accept your situation as it is, and then from there you can work on it, work to improve yourself. Because if you try to live someone's life, then you find yourself you're not able to get there, and then you start thinking you're so unfortunate. Whereas you're not unfortunate. It's only that your time has not come to be there. So what I say is that, and even what you see in media is just, most of it is acting. It's not real. But the reality on the ground, as we say, things kwa ground ni different. Ni tofauti. So accept things as they are in the ground and then improve on that. And especially for young people, if like you have been newly employed, I always say, why go for a lifestyle you cannot afford? Live as per your means. And even if probably you have good work, good job, you cannot now start even, cannot afford to waste a lot of resources when you've not built yourself. You need a foundation, because life is not about today, it's also about tomorrow. So what are you doing for your future? Because I believe soon, those who have no families, you'll have a family. What are you going to leave for your family? So think in terms of not only for today, but even for tomorrow. Yeah.
Now this brings about the question of trying to please others. And I believe that is a problem we are trying to face, right, Maureen? Yeah, you find yourself, you're trying to please your parents, you're trying to please your friends, you're trying to please everyone, and you end up forgetting that you have a life to live on your own.
Very true. I'll divide it in two aspects. I'll look at it in two perspectives. One, which I would call psychological, that is causing psychological distress, or you are not able to cope from, especially when you are growing up. You may have been brought up by caregivers or parents who socialized you to say yes. Maybe you were brought up by parents who are kind of dictatorial. So to you, you have no option to say yes. So you grow up in that situation. Even when now you are grown up, you are always saying yes, because at the back of your mind, you hear that voice of your father or your mother shouting down on you. So there's that sound or voice that is always ringing in your mind. Don't do this, you have to do this. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is you want to conform to your peers, which now may be a recent one. So for the parents, where childhood experience, that would take time. Probably you'd need also to go for therapy. That's why you need psychologists or counselors to help you go through it. For this other aspect is a matter of understanding yourself and know that you can never please every people. The more you try to please people, the more you get disappointed, because people keep on shifting the expectation. And you cannot meet everybody's expectation. Because you may think now when you buy this, everybody will be happy with you, and you realize that another thing has come up. So you learn, you are chasing weed. So that to be content with what you have and be comfortable with yourself. Accept yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So over to you, Pastor Kinoti.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, I think I will start by first reading us some scripture.
Good.
Then maybe I will set a situation whereby around family life. Now I'll be reading from Colossians 3, verse 18 to some point. That is, it says, "Wife, submit to your own husbands, as it's fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and do not be bitter towards them. Children, obey your parents. All things for this will please the Lord. Father, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged." Then there is even a portion here. "Bond servants, obey in all things your master according to the flesh, not with high service as men pleasure, but in sincerity of heart and fearing of God." Now, in the light of that text, I'm looking at it with the current scenario in. We have had cases whereby we have, because of the COVID-19, people are spending a lot of time together in their home.
Yes.
And the issue of family conflict has come out significantly. And of course, from this text, I would move that in a family setting, we are at different stages of growth and need. Now, the father has specific needs, the mother has specific needs, and we look at them holistically, like spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, social. And the teen has some special needs. And the youth and the young adult also has special needs.
Yes.
And the child has special need, and everybody has some need. And when you are living in a family setting, we need to have some amount of mutualism. So we set an environment, everybody continues increasing, and as their felt need is. So the sharing has to be that, the environment and the opportunity. And there should be significant amount of talk. People should talk to one another.
Opening up, yes.
Opening up and talking to one another. Because I think in life, from the question you've responded to and what you taught us last week,
Right.
you told us that we can learn, we can unlearn,
Learn and relearn.
and relearn
New behavior.
new behaviors.
Exactly.
Though I know somewhere when I was growing up, you were told you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. So, but from that and the new findings from brain, how the brain works and how it develops, I agree with you absolutely that we can learn, relearn, and relearn. Now, how do we talk to this? As in, like, given in the light of this scripture, how do we talk to this that the wife is submissive? Not submissive as in, like, if I have, as the husband, if I have bad behavior and I am doing what the Bible is not telling me, not to be bitter towards. Because I think even anger and bitterness is some kind of madness. So you are momentarily mad. If you are annoyed with somebody, you are momentarily mad. It's a minute. But if you relearn you are doing the wrong thing and you change, then you are able to self-care. Now, how do we speak to, what can, I don't know, can we respond to this question? How do we make the environment at home? Because you can find a situation where you have all these people at the same time in the same house.
Yes.
You have a mzee like me with my mzee wife, and I have a daughter like Kinya, and I have a son like, and I have a niece like her in my house, and I have my big child.
Yes,
How do we have this mutualism? Maybe we can speak to this. And I think I open the floor.
Yeah, each one of us.
Yeah, maybe you can say something. And when you say something, I think that will enable us start creating an environment. Maybe you could respond first.
Okay, yes.
Then as you can tell us, what do you think could be the action to that?
Yeah, probably to start with is which can minimize that, because as long as people are alive and they are together, you'll never miss conflict, because we are dynamic in terms of thoughts, in terms of behaviors. But one thing that comes to my mind in terms of conflict reduction is roles. Each one of us in a family has a role to play. So as a family, we need to know what are the roles of the father in that family. What is the role of the mother? What is the role of the firstborn in that family? What is the role of the secondborn? What is the role of probably the visitors or the relatives that you are living in? Because once we understand our role in that family and do as per that role, then you reduce the conflict. For example, I know, especially the fathers, who they expect them to be the breadwinners in their family. And maybe this mzee and the business is crossed. But the family is looking upon him still to provide. And probably it's the wife who has the opportunity to go and provide. So the woman now takes the role of the breadwinner. But she does not take the headship of the family. So if she confuses breadwinning and being the hand of the family, there will be conflict about that, okay? Probably even it's not the parent, it is the young person who is now bringing in the bread. As much as you're bringing in the bread does not mean now you're the end of the family. So we need to understand what our role in the family and take that role and run with it. Yes. And probably the others can.
Yeah, I think let's hear you speak to this.
Yes.
And we can start with Celine. Maybe what do you feel could reduce conflict in a family setting? And then maybe from Tumochai and the others.
In a family setup, of course, we see a lot of conflict, and this is because I think, or I feel that people don't understand and know their purpose, or what, as he said, the roles. If you've done gender, there's something called gender roles, and these roles are not the same for everyone. Each and every person has a role to play in that family. If you're a child, you play the role of a child to respect. And if you're a parent, you have to play the role of providing. But in most cases, we see people have forgotten their roles in the family. That's why you see, in most cases, we have family setups in that the man doesn't take the role of providing. So instead, he's out there drinking and all that, those kinds of things. So you see, in a family setup, that child who is there will just look up to the father and see that if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, why am I supposed also to do what I'm supposed to do? And that is where we lack respect. That is where conflict comes in, because in most cases, we see, in these cases, the mothers are the ones who hold the houses together, and they're the providers. So in this case, you see, if a woman provides and the man has the power, but is not doing the right thing, there will be conflict, because this woman feels that I'm not the one who's supposed to be doing this. The person who is supposed to be doing this is doing some other things which do not make sense in life. So we see there will be conflict because she doesn't understand why she's supposed to have a man who is not providing. And it's not that the man doesn't have, it's because he has engaged in other things that do not bring
misplaced priorities.
Yes. So you see, if we just focus on understanding that you have to play the role of a child, you must respect. And if you have to play the role of a father, then provide. If you play the role of a mother, put your children together and, put your house together. So I think it's just basically that.
Yeah. Thank you. My response to that question is that when you look at the modern world today, is that the roles are still the same as in the traditional way we know, in the modern way of life today. The roles still remain. But when you look at what actually is happening today in our families, we see that the roles are changing. And as the role changes, there's no structure to address them. So I think that is another way that's causing conflict. But another response I would give is that as in our families, I think we should try to maybe understand someone. These are people we have lived with them for some bit of time, and we know if I react this, someone else will react this. Now if we compromise maybe a bit, I think to lead to some conflict reduction in our families. Yeah, thank you.
What I can say about handling conflicts, especially to parents, is they should have an open mind. At times a teenager anaweza kuja na feelings, very angry, and instead of looking at it like there's a problem behind that reaction, wataanza kusema umeanza kuwa kichwa ngumu siku hizi, ama umeanza kuharibika, ama unahitaji maombi. These things mnasikianga na wazazi. I believe they should be open-minded and learn to look at the source and the root of the problem and not just what is presenting itself. So for parents also, and then as young people, we should learn to be understanding. There's the other day I was watching cartoons. We have grown with cartoons, right? And we love cartoons, but I came to understand the reason why my parents don't like them. They didn't grow with that. We have grown up in a different setting. So as young people, I'd say let us learn to understand our parents as well. Understand where they're coming from. Even if we have conflicting views, first understand this parent of mine, where is she coming from, or where is he coming from, before I react and judge, so that we are able to reach an understanding. So that is my opinion on conflict resolution.
For me, I'd argue it's from a different dimension, though close to it. I'd argue from a different dimension, though close to what everyone has said. I think it's as a result of the dynamics of the changing world. So you get to a point where, parents have become so busy, especially here in the city, we could argue to that. Parents have become so busy, now they think, or maybe it's attributed that they only need to provide, leave the kids with the house helps, and then, there are no values that are passed from one generation to another, in the sense that you'll get, maybe, I will be able to understand if mom is not there, we are arguing with Rachel as my cousin and we live in the same homestead on ways to maybe come to an amicable agreement. So I think it's as a result of the changing world, so parents also need to, up their game, as well as we young people try to understand, because as everyone has said, the father is meant to be the head of the family. But again, you see, if I'm left at home with the house help ever, like now the house help assumes like the role of the guardian, of someone who I look up to. So whatever values the house help passes to me, that's what I'll think. Maybe if I tell her something and she thinks I'm too young, I'm not meant to address her, and then she shouts at me, I'll do the same thing when mom is there or dad is there and there's an argument, maybe we don't agree, and then I'll just pass the same value I took from my house, from the nannies we have at home, to resolve the same. So I'll raise my voice on mom because you left me to the care of my house help. So I'm picking values from there. So I think parents also should up their game, despite the busy lifestyles and the dynamics of the changing world, at least to create some space and time to pass values from one generation to another. They could be generational values, they could be family, personal family values, they could be, of any form, but at least values that we can hold on to whenever there are crises or conflicts. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, around the same question, there is what Mochai put across is that, you see, my father could be a person maybe who comes shouting at us. There are those kind of daddies who come, even the cat knows he has come. It goes into hiding. And the dogs come and they all run away because the mzee has come. So now you can find that the coping mechanism is, as Moshaya said, is that you understand and you adapt. But momentarily, I have a very strong feeling that may not be right, because you might, when you grow up to start your own family, for example, you might be more or less, there's a book I read where this is not your parents' marriage. You see, so when Moshai now leaves, maybe he was having a father like that. When he leaves, he now starts his family in such a setting. Now, that is why I come in with what you taught us last week. That moment by moment, when one needs to really examine himself, some of these behaviors I have need to be, because in this environment I coped so that I can be able to coexist with harmony properly. So, and if something stays for a long time, it might be a learned behavior. And what she's trying to put across, teenagers, like for example, somebody between the age of 12 and 19, their brains are still forming. They don't have access to the prefrontal cortex in like an adult. Yeah. So they sometimes, now if they're exposed into a wrong environment, they'll make it very quick. If they get stressed, they get more stressed than adults, than even children. So how do we help family and actually the various individuals in family, now I'll ask you to respond to that, the various individuals in family to deal with issues around being stressed, because we are staying together. And sometimes it also results into stigma, and I can have minute or a moment kind of a illness because I am no longer relating to my father. I'm obeying my father in fear, not in love. I'm obeying my mother in fear, not in love. The wife is no longer submitting, because now she has to do the roles of finding, and this guy is in the hula baloo of doing nothing. He's become God. He's creating from nothing. And then the husband doesn't love his wife. When he goes to doing nothing, I think by projection he becomes bitter. I mean, if he's no longer doing the role of whatever, he's becoming bitter.
Okay.
Children are now obeying, like Moshe is providing. They are obeying because the Bible says they obey.
Okay.
But things are very, very, very what? Wrong. And then somehow the father provokes. And when he is at 12 to 19, he might even decide, get the courage to confront the father and tell him, when you father, you. He might have the courage. And she has brought in the aspects of bond servants. Now they take the role of the father and the mother. So we have a family whereby I think issues of mental health have become significant. Now, where do we start from, and how do we deal with it? From a clinical point of view, and of course, I know you're also a preacher.
Yes.
So
one thing, it is very good that we are discussing this topic. One of the things that we need to understand, in psychology, we have what we call social learning. And much of the social learning happens in families and communities. There is a way we grow up and we are socialized to adopt certain behaviors and certain attitudes. And mostly the social learning that happens in home sticks longer, even into adulthood. I've come across so many young people, especially those who are in drug addiction, those who are in other perverse behaviors, and I ask them, how did you get it? And when I take history, it becomes so obvious. It is starting from the home environment. And what Reverend you've mentioned about even being violence, domestic violence. So this young man grows up and he sees his father beating the mother. So it becomes like it's obvious for him, or it is acceptable to do it, which is not true. So when he gets his own wife, he starts beating the wife, or shouting at his children because his father shouted at him. So social learning is very important. So, and that's why I want now to bring in what point she came about, that as parents, we need to understand what is our role in terms of bringing up the children. Your role as the guardian, your role as the parent is very key. Because if you don't play that role of now giving or bringing out social behaviors that are acceptable, you adopt to maladaptive behavior. So we need to bring now at a family level, what are the values that we uphold in our family? Because these values are going now to be taken next to the next level by these children. So learning, social learning is very key. So whatever the children see their parents do, they are likely to adopt that. But I know there are those who will say, I will never be like my father. So that brings in now resentment and bitterness. They are so bitter with their parents, they are so bitter with their guardian, now they do the opposite of that. So that also happens. The other thing is, sometimes when I was doing my master's, I did a research on sources of conflict in family. And that which stood out was financial. Finances are one of the major conflicts in family and even in marriage. And if it is that's an area that is not often spoken about. When people don't handle their finances well, then they're about to have conflict. And that brings the issue of how open are you to each other as a family? Now that we are all together, do the children understand the financial status of their parents? Because if they don't understand the financial status of the parents, they have expectations. My father, my mother, my guardian, and my sister can afford this, can afford that. When they cannot afford, what happens? There is conflict. Even parents themselves, they need also to understand it comes to a point where now you have also to be realistic and adjust to the reality, especially during this COVID-19 epidemic. People need to do a lot of adjustment. You cannot keep on with the lifestyle probably you hand. There are things that you need to scale down and explain to your children. This is what is happening, so we need to adjust 1, 2, and 3, and therefore there will be less conflict. Are you using the resources as you're supposed to? So financial issues is also another thing. So you need also to understand and balance our finances right. So I think those are the things that we need now to understand. Yeah.
Now over to Celine. I believe there's some questions that you had.
Okay, basically, I'm going to talk about relationships, and I really wanted to ask some questions like, how do I really know that I'm in a toxic relationship, and how do I know if I'm the toxic partner, and what do I do now that I'm in that toxic relationship?
Very key and very important question. But I want also to throw it back to the group. So what are the signs of a toxic relationship? What would you consider to be toxic in a relationship? I think that's where we need to start. Probably we can start with you. What would you consider to be a toxic in a relationship?
An obsessive person, like someone who likes being in control despite if he's a male or the female. You know, there's ought to be some balance. Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I'd say someone who's violent. It can be physical abuse or emotional abuse. Any kind of abuse to your partner is just a toxic sign.
Very key.
Okay. A toxic relationship, maybe someone who is spontaneous, maybe in decision making, maybe in not involving you. Can I say opportunistic? Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think a toxic relationship is where you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't value your feelings and doesn't reciprocate what is supposed to be done in a relationship and leaves you to it, like you don't know if they just want to make you feel as if you had the relationship, but in real sense they do, but the things they do not consider your feelings.
Okay,
yes.
That's very key. I don't know, Reverend, do you have something you would consider to be toxic?
I think they've said it all. A relationship which lacks mutualism. A relationship which lacks mutualism, respect of one another, and respect of the people's need. As in, like, as she has said, she's used the word feelings, but I think we should go more beyond feelings, as in, like, holistically, you actually deny somebody. Feelings are the emotions, but also social needs of the other person, physical needs, even spiritual needs. You can relate with somebody and you end up having that person being defiled in the presence of God. If you go to, is it Matthew 18? Where he says, if you do anything wrong against this little one, Matthew 18:10 tells you there are angels which look at the face of God because of the little ones. Now, it is better you have a milestone tied around your neck and be sent to the deepest.
Yes.
So it's so important that you be careful when handling your neighbor, because you are supposed to love your neighbor as you love yourself. I think that should be Matthew 22, verse 37 to 40, where you are told, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And how do you love your God? With all your might. You love him completely. And I see that again in Exodus 20, where he provides that you should have no other God. So providence is from God completely. But in real life, we kind of like become blind to that. That we need to start with God in the morning, we need to start with God in the middle, all the time. And then we should not have any other God. Immediately you start having other gods, even including yourself, become self-reliant. Something happens. And then we need to be able to enter God's presence. And what I find in the 10 Commandments, the family is in the middle. Where honor your mother and father so that your days can be long. It means the family setting is important. God provides around a family setting. The basic unit God created for us to abide in and grow out of or grow in is a family setting. Yeah. So and the rest of the other things like do not kill, do not murder, all those others, do not covet your brother's things or your his wife or give false witness, which now comes with the wrongdoing.
Yeah. So just maybe to the issue of toxic relationship. There's something I call values. So if you're in a relationship and the person does not uphold your values, then it means that someone will start forcing you or influencing you to do differently, to live a different life that you're not used to. So once you start living a life that you yourself is not used to, then that would be a toxic relationship. And it said, better broken engagement than a broken marriage. So for young people, I would say before you get to the marriage aspect of it, please, if you don't think it will work after marriage. If it's not working now, it won't work even then. Even you'll be deep into it, that will be difficult to come out. So better broken engagement than a broken marriage. Yes.
And then, this brings up another problem. Right now, time of Corona, people have been separated in relationships as well. And it's a very new thing to most of the young people, considering it's not marriage. When it's marriage, in good times and bad times, they just stay together. But now, things have changed. But someone is in Meru County, another one is in Mombasa County. And this is something we're not used to. So coming from someone who is in a marriage, what would you tell us young people to deal with this in a better way?
I think where Daktari is, when you say values, when you start maybe dating, what are the values of the other guy? I think you use the word, what are the values? Now, I'm now talking maybe from a pastoral perspective. What are the values of the other guy? Are those values the same as yours? If they are different, then don't expect them to change when you get married. They will. It's the first law of motion. A body continues unless it meets an obstacle. So those values. Then when there's dating, then courting, then preparation for marriage. If you have gone through the stages. So while you use the words of Gladys Smith, socialize but don't specialize. Don't go and start specializing. Don't get into the marriage before you date, you court, and then when you have courted and you are sure beyond reasonable doubt, and you have the beginning, the procedure, and the end, then you are now able to approach it in a more, because you have checked the values are the same, and you're able to relate with them. Now over back to you, Dr.
Yeah, that's very key. Knowing your values and respecting your values is very key, because if you don't, then someone can easily override those values that you have. So for young people, now about relationship, we've been talking about long distance relationship. Those who have gone through it, it's a challenge. And for us who come from the old generation, we used to write letters then. But now there are no letters. There are SMSs, you have the social media, you have the Zoom. You can take advantage of the media, and so that you can get in touch. Not like before, when you could wait for a letter for 3 months just to hear what the other person is.
But you guys are very patient.
Yes, there was a lot of patience then. So if someone is even in America and you're not able to, you can do through WhatsApp, Zoom, Skype. Talk to each other. Because the thing is, you get connected to each other. But it's also a testing time. It is an advantage. Because if this person is not patient now, then these are flags. I call them red flags. Yes. If they are not patient with you now, then how will they be patient then? So it's also time to test the durability of your relationship. Is this person really serious, or is it that it's something else? So if they're able to wait, to be patient, then that's a sign. It's a good relationship.
There is a scripture, 1 Samuel 2:26 and Luke 2:52. They are actually similar. They talk about the same thing. So when Samuel was brought into the temple and he was well established, the Bible provides this information that now Samuel now increased in spiritually, physically, emotionally, socially, and intellectually. And when Jesus had gone to the temple and had that conversation with the scribes, and then the mother and father are looking for him, it also reckons, and now Jesus went home and obeyed his parents. Before he goes home and obeys his parents, and his mother hides the things he told him in her hands. It also reckons Christ grew spiritually, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and what? Socially. And now, when you talk about values, the ones he's saying, what are the spiritual values of your potential partner? What are his physical values?
Yes.
What are his intellectual values? You want to have your PhD by the time you're 30 in social work. And maybe he wants to do his PhD in economics, maybe in what? By 29. So now, or I don't know, there's a way you go, maybe he wants to be a rally driver and he has no interest in PhDs. Now, those values, the value values must be holistic. So when you consider those values, it's the whole spectrum of everything, the complete all. So that you now see, and remember when you enter into any relationship so that it's not toxic, that you're sure this person will love you unconditionally. Actually, that's requirement number one. As you can see here, wives submit, husband love, agape. Then allow your wives and do not bitter towards them. So it's,
Again, something that has also come into my mind, when dating, what are those activities that you're involved in? Yes, because if the activities you do is more of erotic activities, then definitely you will miss that person. Probably it's physical activities, which maybe your values, you don't have those. So, but if it is about connecting, social, as Reverend is saying, social and intellectual connection, you can use other means of doing that. But now if it is now on the other side of it, and it's very common with the generation that we have, the first day you go for a date, that's the first day you get into bed. You miss the whole point. You know what Reverend said, you start specializing. You already started specializing. Yes.
Skip the steps.
Yes.
So, and she mentioned that what do you do when now you find yourself you're already in this toxic relationship? What is the next thing that you're supposed to do?
Run. No option.
There is a Bible story. I don't remember where exactly in Genesis it. There's a guy called Joseph. This guy was so full of, he was so cool. He was so cool until his master's wife found him so cool. And this is an older woman, presumably, because it's the wife of the master. Found him so cool. Believe you me, if you read that text properly, I can't remember exactly where it is, but I don't want to start flapping pages now. It was not once, it was not twice, several times. She tried all manner of ways. And as Adakari says, run. He ran and ran and ran. His values remained in him because in his value he remained holy, that he is still able to relate with Jehovah who preserves him moment by moment. He ran until he left his tunic behind and left the lady so frustrated. And she was frustrated. She has no choice but to blame him completely, so that now he ends up in jail. Look at how the grace of God is with him in jail. There's another Bible story of David's son. Physical. Actually, basically, boy child is normally very physical in orientation. So the first relationship you have with them is definitely, if he's malformed, he will definitely start to desire you physically. Which is very normal. Yes, it is as from even the Archbishop of Canterbury, I think, as long as he has some testosterone, he will definitely find Otherwise, you're not okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it is so normal.
Yes.
And not at the mode of dressing and the way we present ourselves. So, you remind me of something when I used to teach chemistry, we used to call them S-orbital. You come out so profoundly that you have the posterior protuberances and the anterior protuberances, and they are well-defined quarters, and they are presented so clearly. Yet, the boy child is... So, it's your values, how you present yourself. And I think the carrier said it, socialize. So we create forums whereby you can interact. Until, even before you even start dating, you know beyond reasonable doubt. Like Moshai and me cannot, because you have learned him through several activities. And in church we try and do that. We try and create very many activities for young adults to a point whereby you are socializing week after week. And it has enough eye contact, it has enough touch, it has enough talk. Not touch the wrong way, touch spiritually, touch physically, because there is a kind of touch which is wrong. And it makes you aware of what the Word of God says to you. It makes you to realize where your actual need is, and it even enables the boy child to form a sacrificial intellectus, to change the way they think that in a relationship there is more to it rather than the simple biological function, which is, in fact, if you read his need and her needs, to the man, the man is number 2. But to ladies is number 13. So for you to get to the ultimate, just pick the book. Is need and her needs. For you to get, but now that is in marriage. So before that, you need to be socializing, but you be absolutely sure that when you get in, you cannot get out. And if you get in with somebody who is not with the same values as you, and you have the values of Christ, then you have no choice but to vumilia until that particular person is transformed into likeness of Christ. So, thank you.
And running away is not a sign of weakness or backwardness. It's a sign of godly wisdom. Yes.
So far ladies have been speaking sana hapa, so I'll ask boy child. Umesema kitu kidogo.
Okay, thank you. And I'll go back to a bit when Kino was speaking. She spoke of the young youth, the youth, and their futures, and their future lives. So my question is, most of us, let me say, stressed. There's that thing you cannot see your future beyond, and so it brings a lot of uncertainties. Our future. I was saying, looking at our lives now as youth, things are different from way back then. And now this has brought a lot of uncertainties to many of the youth and their futures, and especially even in this time of this pandemic, such that maybe I had started a small business. Now I cannot see where it is going. I had incurred some loan somewhere. I'm just trying to make some things work, and you cannot see the light beyond. It's like it is dark, so that's creating a lot of depression, mental distress, and like you begin even to feel hopeless. And how can you address that? I think it is especially for the young men who are trying to make it work. I think the major role of man is to provide, so you have to start from somewhere. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very common, and it's something that is a challenge to everyone who is living a time like this. And I always say that learn to accept. Learn to accept things are not the same. And they will not be the same for quite some time. Even if Corona is gone, it will take time to go back to where we were. And the things will never be the same again because of this epidemic. So one, learn to accept. Number two, learn to adopt. Learn to adopt. And adopting means you'll be able to cope with it. And how do you cope? Look for alternatives. So if you are doing this kind of business and it has closed down, why not look for an alternative? When I'm moving around in the estates, I'm finding people parking very nice cars and selling sukuma wiki. This is something that has never been there before. Yes, someone is in a machine and they are selling sukuma wiki and green maize. They have learned to adapt to the situation, because if you park the machine there and it's parked the whole day and you are just there, oh my, it will not work. So these guys, I like the way people are very, very innovative. So cope with the situation as it is. Maybe there are things that you had, some talents you had, and you have not defined them. It's time to define and use those talents. If it's painting, you are an accountant, but you had a special gift in painting, it's the right time you go there. Because the office has been closed, go and do your painting. Yeah? If it is, maybe you are in a medical field and the hospital has been closed, like it is they are being closed now, and probably I was a farmer somewhere, why not go back to the farm and do some farming? These are unusual moments. So it will now take us even to make those decisions, adopt to the situation, which is very key.
Adapt,
Yes.
then cope.
And cope.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then that is very helpful, considering some of us tumeshindwa wenye tutafanya. It's high time we start doing something to help ourselves and get productive. And then we say an idle mind is a devil's workshop.
Sure.
So we have to be very cautious right now. And you say the issue of drug abuse, you might find yourself indulging in that.
True.
Because, I don't know if it's in everyone, whereby if you're not a productive human being and you're lacking a sense of purpose, it starts eating you from the inside. And that kills your sense of drive, and you end up now indulging in things that are not actually productive.
Yeah.
So, Pastor Kennedy.
I want to, unasema indulge, unajua unasema drugs. I follow your footsteps sometimes. You can actually go and maybe take maybe a movie which has 7 or 8 parts and it's very exciting. You watch it the whole night, or you watch it over 2 or 3 days. And then what happens is that, what does it do to you? If you introspect, you'll actually find that it actually is the same as smoking or drinking, or it actually, believe you me, it kind of like takes you away from looking for the alternative gig, to adapt. So, your brain is no longer available because it keeps you in fantasy realm. So today's environment has so many things which derail you from being that productive person. And social media has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. Imagine you're in the FB book for the next 3 hours. You're seeing what everybody is doing. You should be...
It's the feeling, what you're feeling.
Yeah, it's critical. So I think, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have to be very cautious. Now, what about now issues of mental stigma? I believe you want to highlight that, Pastor Kinoti.
Mental stigma. I don't know. Maybe I can case study myself. I am over 50. I am over 50, and I've gone through the stages of being a child, the stages of being a teen, the stages of being a young adult, etc., etc. I gave my life to Christ when I was around 22. And what I would say is that, and is it unfortunate or fortunate? I don't know why my head always goes to a biblical example always. I'm not like Daktari. I will not case study real people, but I will always case people who are in the Bible. I go to the prodigal son. Both sons had an issue. And if you introspect yourself, you're either prodigal or selfish. And if it is prolonged over a duration of time, it becomes a habit. You have learned something and it becomes a way of life. Because Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father unless through him. Now you find that I can actually have a behavior and learn it, and it becomes part of me. And if like the prodigal son, he comes to his consciousness and realizes, where I am so far away from meeting my spiritual, physical, emotional, intellectual, and social need. But in my father's house, even the servants have all these things. So let me go back to my father's house, and even, that even the Greco-Phoenician woman, so that I can even get breadcrumbs from what? Down at the table. Because even the dogs and the pigs at my father's house have all these amenities. So when you take now your soul, that is your mind, your emotions, your persona, because everyone is different. As you said earlier, kila mtu akona persona yake, na kila mtu akona mind yake. Now if you take your way away, believe you me, you are momentarily in some kind of some mental illness. If you find you're not able to cope, or you're getting annoyed because of something, actually I think being annoyed with something is also a kind of like a mental illness. It can be a minute. Even when you are being passed on the traffic or somebody says something bad to you, it's some kind of mental illness. It's a small... The thing is, the coping mechanism. How do you always care for your soul, care for your conscience? Because your conscience needs to be always awake to the presence of God and to the presence of the what that comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Then when you speak yourself, I think that is what the experts here would call self-care. That is what you call self-care. That is, you speak to yourself. So there are minutes on ways of dealing with mental illness, because we can take you to a psychiatrist, we can give you drugs, but you never change the way. And you should be so conscious of that. You allow, that is now the discipline of holiness. You allow that your conscience directs you. When your conscience tells you when something is wrong, and you can decide to accept it, and you go on that path. And you see that in Romans chapter 1 verse 19. If you continue in a path, he allows you to continue with it. So and then now look at the other son. The other son was selfish, yet he was next to the father in the farm with all those opportunities, with the right environment. So in life, you're either prodigal or selfish. And all sins we do, how we miss the mark, you're either prodigal or selfish. Now, look at how the father cares for the soul of who? Of the son, because the brother has come. Your brother was dead, now he is alive. Now, you need to know that we have to be careful to be worried about the ones who have the least of opportunities, like ourselves. So life is around being selfless and being related to God and being able to grow in the likeness of Christ, because he says, I am the way, the truth, and the Father. And then another thing, 1 Timothy 1:15, then I can end there. And Paul, who is the one who has written around 13 books in the Bible, comes and says, here is a trustworthy saying, Christ Jesus came to save sinners, and I am the worst of them all. Believe you me, if you come to that consciousness that you have a condition which, because from Psalms 51:5, from the day we are conceived, we have a way of missing the mark. We think wrong, we say wrong. So if you depend on God to be able to change the way we think, we say, and do things, and yield to our consciousness. Now, the problem is, how many times do we return to God in 24 hours? Do we wake up in his presence? Do we spend the day in his presence? Now, if we introspect and realize that we don't do that, then I think there is an improvement on that we need to go back to the Father. I think I have a bias to give the answer from a biblical point of view, but I don't know what Dr. would say about that.
Okay, very quick one is mental health. We have what we call mental disorders. Mental disorders is where now someone's social, occupational functioning is severely affected. So that one, you say that person has a mental disorder. And management of it is they need to look for specialists to manage that condition. We also have what we call chronic mental illnesses. Chronic, these are conditions that one has to live with for the rest of their lives. So they will keep on probably on medication, on therapies until the end. There are those ones we call them just maybe acute, it's just an episode. And because of an episode or something happens, they have it and then they normalize. So what I always advocate is that one accept a mental condition, it's part of us. Just the way we accept diabetes, how we accept high blood pressure, or any other condition. We live with them, but go for management and don't now stigmatize people with mental illnesses. Let them go for treatment and they'll be able to live reasonably a normal life. So that's what I would like to say.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to conclude this session, and I'll thank everyone for joining us here today. I believe this was a very productive session, and I will wish you all a lovely week, and looking forward to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.